Tonight it's my turn to tell the story at the campfire. I'm going to tell you guys about the mesmerizing Duen's whispers I'll never forget that night. It's been years, but the memory is still fresh. The worst part, I think I can still hear that voice. I was like 11, just a kid in a small village in St. Martin. We had a big celebration that day, a festival with music and dancing. The adults were busy and we were playing around. It was kind of late for my younger brother, so I decided to head home. We took the usual shortcut through the woods, a path we knew well, but this time, something was different. As we walked, Kofi suddenly stopped. His face turned pale, his eyes wide with fear. I asked him what was wrong, but he just pointed ahead, his finger trembling. That's when I heard it, a soft, low whispering. It wasn't clear at first, just a faint noise coming from deeper in the woods. The voice seemed to call out, almost like it was singing. I told Kofi to stay close, trying to sound brave, even though I was scared too. We continued walking, but the whispering got louder. It felt like the voice was right behind us. Then we saw him, a little boy, not much younger than us, standing on the path in the darkness. He was dressed in old, tattered clothes, and he looked lost. His eyes were so wide and hollow, it sent chills down my spine. Kofi and I approached him, asking if he needed help. The boy just stared at us with a blank expression. Then he said something that I'll never forget. "Come with me. It's safer." Something about his voice didn't feel right. It was too smooth, too perfect. It felt like a trap. I could feel the hair on my neck stand up. I knew we had to get out of there fast. I grabbed Kofi's arm and tried to pull him away, but he wouldn't move. He seemed mesmerized, as if he was in a trance. The boy continued to speak softly, telling us how dangerous it was on the path we were taking and to come with him because he knew a better way. His voice like a sickly sweet melody. I remembered the stories my grandmother used to tell me. She spoke of the Duen, a wicked spirit that lures children into the forest. The Duen can look like any child, but they always have a hidden agenda. With a pounding heart, I knew we had to leave. I pulled Kofi harder, and finally, he snapped out of it. We turned and we ran, hearing the boys whispering fading behind us. When we reached the edge of the woods, we stopped to catch our breath. Kofi and I looked at each other, our faces pale. We didn't speak a word until we got home. I don't think either of us ever spoke of that night again. My mother worked 2 jobs, so when she's at work, I take care of Kofi. Kofi was running around outside while I kept an eye on him. Normally the nights are usually very calm, but tonight, something felt off. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, leaving the woods near our home almost pitch black. I was sitting in the balcony and Kofi was playing near the edge of the forest when he suddenly stopped and stared into the darkness. His little face looked oddly calm, almost mesmerized. "It's happening again." I shouted Kofi to come inside, trying to sound cheerful to mask my unease, but he didn't move. He just stood there, eyes wide and staring into the shadows of the trees. Then I heard it. At first, it was just a faint sound, like a gentle breeze, but then it grew clearer. A soft, melodious whisper, as if someone was singing just for Kofi. It was calling his name. The voice seemed to say, "Kofi, come to me." My heart pounded as I rushed to Kofi, trying to shake him out of whatever trance he was in. The whispering grew more urgent, more insistent. "Come to me, little one. It's safe here. Come and play." The voice seemed to come from all around, wrapping us in a sinister embrace. Fear surged through me. I knew we had to get out of there. I pulled Kofi hard, trying to drag him back to the house. As soon as we crossed back onto the open ground of our yard, the whispering stopped. The sudden silence was almost as terrifying as the voice itself. I just ushered him inside, locking the door behind us and making sure every window was shut tight. We sat by the fire, and I tried to stay calm, but my mind kept racing. That night, I stayed alert, listening to the eerie quiet of the forest and praying we were safe. Kofi picked at his food and kept glancing out the window. I tried to distract him, telling silly jokes and funny stories, but nothing worked. The shadow of the woods loomed in his mind. After dinner, we went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the wind whisper outside, and I felt like something was waiting for us. Around midnight, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. The footsteps stopped, and then I heard Kofi's voice. "It's time to go," he said softly. I saw Kofi standing by his bed and pointing at the window. "He's a beautiful light," he whispered. Just then, a cold breeze swept through the room, and I heard a soft, melodic voice floating through the window. "Come to me, little one. I have games to play. I felt a pull in my chest, but I fought it. I cried and shouted at Kofi that he is my brother and that he can't go, wrapping my arms around him. In that moment, he snapped back to reality. I hugged him tightly. A feeling of relief washed over me, but deep down, I knew the danger wasn't over. The next morning, I told Mom everything. Her face paled. She decided to take a long journey to the elders in the village. She told us to stay inside until she comes back. At the village, the elders gathered around, sharing worried whispers and contemplating how to fight this strong Duin. That day, we stayed close to home. I kept an eye on Kofi, but he seemed different, more distant. I told Kofi to stay inside, but he would not listen. He said he couldn't hear him anymore, but I knew the Duin was still out there. While I was fetching water from the river, I saw Kofi at the edge of the woods again. My stomach twisted as I watched him stand there, swaying slightly. I ran toward him, my heart pounding. I shouted, but he didn't respond. As I got closer, I saw something in front of him. A figure, cloaked in shadows, grew bigger. My breath caught in my throat. It's the Duin. I grabbed Kofi's arm just as the figure reached for him. Kofi gasped, and for a moment, I felt him pull away, but I held on tight. I yelled at the figure to let him go, feeling a surge of courage. The air around us grew heavy, the whispers growing louder, like a storm about to break. Suddenly, the figure recoiled, its voice hissing. He said that I cannot keep him from them. The wind howled, but I didn't let go of Kofi. In that moment, I remembered something our grandmother taught me. I shouted the names of our ancestors, words of protection. With each name, the whispers faded, and the figure began to lose its form. It writhed in the shadows, its face twisting in anger. It screamed, and with a final rush of wind, it vanished into the trees. Kofi blinked, confusion washing over his face, shaking his head like he was waking up from a dream. I pulled him into a tight hug. We ran back home, fear still prickling at my skin. My mother reached from the village. She saw that we were very scared. I told her what happened. She started executing the advices the elders gave her from the village. She poured salt at the edges of our yard and in all entrances of the house. She put extra lights outside. We have to wear our underpants inside out, and she gave us black eye beads bracelets. She said she would look for a dog for more protection. We have to tie Max the dog at night. Otherwise, the dog can wander away too. From that day on, Kofi never wandered close to the woods again. My mother told him stories about the Duin, a wicked spirit known for luring children into the forest. How the Duin sometimes take the form of lost children to trick other children. The whispering was meant to make us follow, leading us into danger. After we did those changes, we didn't hear the whispers again. We stayed together, and I made sure he was safe. But sometimes, at night, I think I still hear the whispers in the wind, calling out softly, and I know that the Duin is still out there, waiting for another chance. So guys, that was my story for tonight's campfire. Until next time. The moral of this story? Always be cautious of what seems too good to be true. Sometimes, what looks like help can lead you to danger. The Bible says in Matthew chapter 7 verse 15, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing but inwardly are ravenous wolves." Always trust your instincts, and never ignore the warnings. Have you ever encountered with a Duin? Do you mind sharing? If you enjoyed this story or learned something valuable, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this one, and make sure to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. This is my opinion about this story. I do believe we have these being out there, especially in dark places, waiting to lure someone. I encountered something once, as I was taking a shortcut. This one's eyes were red. I don't know exactly what it was, but I ran like hell to get into the light. As I was running, I was hearing steps behind me. I never looked back, and I never took that shortcut again. So people, just be careful, stay alert at all times. Please stay blessed until next time.